The players who have qualified for the end of year World Tour Finals is done. Every single spot, all 40, have been confirmed. There might be some withdrawals, who knows, but as of recording, all the players are confirmed, and BDRF even released a news article listing out all 40 of the players and pairs who have qualified, and in this video I want to talk about them. I've decided to break this down into 5 separate videos rather than one long one, with the main reason being that I could easily be talking 20-30 minutes on each discipline, so if that becomes one video, that's 2.5 hours, and I just think that people might not want to, not lots of people, there are some of you definitely who would stick around for 2.5 hours, but I feel that if I break it down into 5 videos, that might be more manageable, more likely to get more views, and also there's going to be some people that are only interested in, say, the men's events or the women's events or the mixed doubles or the singles events. You know, there's lots of different people, so they can pick and choose, and so I think it's just that little bit more accessible. Let's crack on. I'm going to start with the men's singles. So the men's singles, funnily enough, just some general notes we're going to the players, has the lowest ranked world champion on the World Tour rankings, that is, and that's Shi Yu Qi. He only qualified in 7th. Actually, funnily enough, usually what we find with World Tour finals is that, you know, every year the world champion, or last year the Olympic champion, gets an automatic qualification for the World Tour finals, and sometimes we have seen that players that have qualified through that wouldn't have qualified had they not won that title. This year, all players, even if they weren't world or Olympic champions, would have qualified. But Shi Yu Qi, actually, out of all 5 disciplines, qualified the lowest on the World Tour rankings. He was qualification spot number 7. What's also about the men's singles is we have 6 different nations, with only China being the only nation with 2 representatives. A country can only have maximum of 2 spots at the World Tour finals. That has meant that in a few of the disciplines, especially for China, that they've missed out. The players that would have technically qualified, they did make the top 8. So, for example, in the women's singles, Chen a former Olympic champion and a player who's had a very good comeback year this year, hasn't qualified in the women's singles because Han Yue and Wang Ziyi were above her. So, 6 different nations in the men's singles, with China being the only country with 2 representatives, although this was actually the same case last year, and actually there's 7 players from last year that are returning. It's only Christo Popov that is new. He took the spot of Li Zijia last year, who sadly got injured at that event, an injury which has, as it's quite clear, really hampered his 2025 season. I hope to see much more of him playing in 2026. So this is the way I'm going to go through these players, is the order, the ranking they came in for the World Tour finals. So number 1, Kunlavut Vitidsarn of Thailand. He's finished the year as he's finished the year as rank 1 on the World Tour, which is, I must say, somewhat surprising, because many, myself included, see Kunlavut as someone who's a big tournament player, major tournament player, but not someone that's consistently producing lots and lots of titles or runs to the finals. But clearly, from finishing World Tour ranked number 1, he's had a very consistent 2020-25, and also just both in terms of results, but also staying injury free, which might be one of the main reasons he's qualified so highly, is that I don't recall him having any periods. Yeah, he's had some periods where his game has come down. You know, he is one of those players that will go up and down in terms of level, but in terms of injuries, he's kept rather injury free, which is a good thing. But yeah, I was talking about his ability. He's more known for his major final expertise. He did reach the Olympic final last year. He reached the world final this year. That was his 3rd consecutive world final. He did win it in 2023. He got to the final in 2022 and this year. This year he also won the Asia Championships, and he reached 4 finals on the World Tour this year, only losing one of those. With it very similar to Shi Yu Qi, the current world champion, that the last final, the one final that he wasn't able to win was his most recent one, which was at the Arctic Open, where he lost to another player I'll talk about a bit later on, Chou, Tien, Chen. Now, only 3 tournaments this year for Kunlavut where he has fallen before the quarterfinals. That was the India Open 750, the All England Super 1000, and the Japan Open Super 750. Now, this does play into something, something that's usually held against Kunlavut Vitidsarn, is that whilst he is known for doing well at the massive majors, we've already spoken about his 3 consecutive world finals, the fact that he was in the last Olympic final. But when it comes to the biggest world tour events, so we're talking about the Super 1000s, Kunlavut does struggle to deliver. As aside from the 2021 World Tour finals, he hasn't reached the final of a Super 1000 tournament. That's just absolutely incredible. He's been in 3 world finals since 2021, been in an Olympic final, that's 4 majors, but hasn't reached a final of a Super 1000. And even that 2021 World Tour finals, that was a bit of a weird year because it was off the back of COVID and the badminton world and the sporting world opening up, and there was a number of players that had qualified for that event, which was held in Bali, Indonesia, that probably wouldn't usually have made a World Tour finals. So yes, it was. He is known as someone that's that kind of question mark against his ability to perform at the highest World Tour events, and obviously the World Tour finals is part of that. So, can he make good on his top seed billing in Hangzhou? Recent form has been okay, but since the World Championships, he hasn't had another really good spell. But maybe that is him building towards the World Tour finals. He is playing the SEA Games. I had a look. I saw an Instagram post this morning, and I'll talk about the SEA Games a number of times, because there's a few players and pairs that have qualified for World Tour finals that are playing the SEA Games. So maybe that could give us an indicator of his level. There's a few pretty good singles players, I think, playing in that. So it'll be a good little test, a good little tournament for him heading into the World Tour finals. But with Kunlavut, you're never quite sure what you're going to get. If he brings his absolutely best level, he's very difficult to handle. But if he's slightly off, then pretty much everyone else on this list, as we know, they're top 8 in the world on the World Tour, are capable of beating him. Moving on, number 2, Shi Feng of China. Shi Feng won a bronze at the Asia Championships, and he's been in 2 finals in 2025 and 2 titles. He won both finals and they were both at Super 500. And actually, funnily enough, in both those finals, he beat Indian opposition. He beat Srikanth Kadambi, a former world number 1 at the Malaysia Masters, and he beat Lakshya Sen at the Hong Kong Open, with that Hong Kong Open being relatively recent. Now, for me, with Shi Feng, he can be a very dangerous player who can bring amazing performances, and he has delivered some pretty big titles on home soil, most notably the Asian Games 2 years ago. But this year, I would say I was quite surprised when I saw that he'd finished ranked number 2, because in all honesty, it's been a bit of an underwhelming year. Relatively consistent, must be consistent to reach the World Tour rank, to qualify in the 2nd spot. But in all honesty, I can't recall too many amazing results or moments from him. He's kind of been there and thereabouts, but maybe that's because Shi Yu Qi, who I know has finished 7th, but Shi Yu Qi obviously became world champion. I'll talk about Shi Yu Qi when I get to him, but he's had a bit more of a year that's a bit more put him in the headlines and stuff, whereas Shi Feng has had some okay results, but at some of the bigger tournaments like the World Championships, he fell in the first round, I think, to Yushi Tanaka. So when there's these big tournaments that come on, or at the Sudirman Cup, China played Shi Yu Qi far more often than Shi Feng. That I think there's another player in the women's singles like that for China. He's kind of fallen at the wayside, or just gone a little bit under the radar, a little bit unnoticed. I think in previous years, he's sometimes propped up because he's always been a little bit of a player that has, kind of had these amazing tournaments. We talk about the All England in 2023, and I would mention the Asian Games. Those are the kind of results that suddenly put him into the spotlight. Whereas this year, yes, he's won 2 titles, but they've come at Super 500, so there's 2 levels above that. They haven't been at tournaments that get more attention, let's say. Whereas Shi Yu Qi has done that. He's won 3 of the 4 Super 1000s and the World Championships. But like I said, he's still a very dangerous player. But the only thing, I guess, going against him when it comes to the World Tour finals is that he's never gone out of his box at the World Tour finals. And this will be his 3rd time at the event. So, I guess, can he rectify that? Can he finally get out of the group stages and into the semi-finals and possibly, deliver a title or get to another final. He is, again, I'm going to say this a lot, all the players on the World Tour Finals that are qualified for the World Tour Finals are certainly capable of doing this. For me, with Shi Feng, it's going to be a little bit, I think, depending on probably how his body feels, because whenever he plays, he has a lot of heavy taping on his legs, usually heavily strapped, and is quite visible often because he likes the pink taping, so it's very, very visible. And maybe that has affected him, and that's why his performances haven't been consistent to the level that we know he's capable of. Clearly, he's been consistent. He's come in, he's qualified in second. You don't get that unless you are getting to the semi-finals or the quarterfinals pretty frequently. But the amount of finals has been way down for a player of that level, and obviously those finals came at slightly lower events. Moving on, number 3, Chen. He is the most experienced men's singles player at the World Tour Finals, and I think he's probably second or third in all disciplines. There's a couple of female players that have been at World Tour Finals a little bit before him, but it's only him and Shi Yu Qi actually that have played this event when it was the Super Series Finals, so that's prior to 2018, so 2017 beforehand, and Chen played his first Super Series Finals when it was held in Dubai 10 years ago in 2015. Now for Chou in 2025, he's reached 3 finals, and the most recent one, the Arctic Open, was quite an important one for him because he became the oldest winner of a men's singles title at a Super 500 and above level. So Super 500, if you're unaware, when it was the Super Series, I just mentioned Super Series Finals, in that era you had Super Series and Super Series Premier. Super 500s are the kind of equivalent of a Super 500, so the eldest player before then, the record was Li Chongwei, and Chou Chen took that record from him. Now, there's a big question mark against Chou Chen, and that is, for me and a lot of other players, does he play too many tournaments? This year, he played 23. Now, when you consider that you only need 14 to qualify, only 14 tournaments can go towards your qualification for the World Tour Finals. He's played an additional 9. The player next closer to him in men's singles was Kodai Naraoka, who played 19. So he played an additional 4. And I think I did kind of try to keep tally of this throughout all the disciplines. I think that's the most tournaments played by any player or pair this year that have qualified for the World Tour Finals. And the fact that Chou Chen is 30. Wait a second, how old is Chou Chen? Let me quickly, I think he's 35, 36. He's 35, so he'll be 36 in January. So he's, the fact he's on the older side, I just said he's got the record for being the oldest player to win a Super 500 or equivalent of men's singles title. The fact that he's playing that many tournaments is a little bit of a question mark. Maybe he does it because I know he does his training slightly differently. Maybe he sees tournament play as kind of his training. I know that Li Chongwei, I know the guy that he took the record from, also used to play quite a lot of tournaments, and he was even more, he was consistently getting to the final rounds, but he would always be playing a lot of additional tournaments compared to other players of his level. And I think it's because he saw it as good training for him and kept him match fit. So maybe Chou Chen sees it as the same way. On his day, as we know, Chou Chen can do well. He's always dangerous. And actually, his recent form since the Arctic Open wasn't so good, although in Australia, he did show a good level. I think he had an absolute epic semi-final against Lakshya Sen. Chou Chen has the ability to do well. He's always been someone that's flown under the radar whenever it came. Even when he was a higher ranked player, whenever anyone did any predictions for like the World Championships or any of that, he was always someone that kind of got overlooked. And that's just the kind of player he is. But if he has his day, he's certainly more capable of doing well. I don't personally see him, just to back up my point, as someone who's going to go on to win. But he's certainly someone that can do particularly well. I guess we'll have to see when it comes to the draw, because I think, if I remember rightly, last year he was my pick to get through the group, and he only got through his group because of the Li Zijia injury. A very, very good player. So moving on, Antonsen from Denmark. He qualified as 4th. He's had a a very solid year. I think he's been a little bit more selective with his tournaments in comparison to someone like a Chou Chen. He got a world bronze medal earlier this year, and he's been in 5 finals in 2025, winning 2 of them, and one of those was the Indonesia Open Super 1000, and also the other title he won was the last tournament that he played, the French Open, Super 750. So those 2 big tournaments. That last win in France was a huge one for him. Obviously, the Indonesia one was as well. The fact that his last World Tour tournament he won, that will give him a huge amount of confidence. Now, I know that Antonsen is traveling to China. I think he's already there. He will be playing in the China Badminton Super League, which runs from now until January. There's obviously breaks in it, one of them being for the World Tour Finals. And so I think some people, when they heard of this, there was a few players in this boat. I think Sung Jae is another player at the height of badminton that is playing in the Super League in China, that maybe this might be too much badminton, because the World Tour is already pretty cluttered, very busy, very hectic. So was it a good decision to travel to play another long competition? And yes, possibly. Although maybe it's not like it's super packed when it comes to the China Super League. It is best of 3 to 15 as well, so maybe it's slightly easier on the body. But you could also see it as within it, he's going to get some really good training. He's going to be part of a Chinese team. He's going to be training in China, and the matches are going to be of the highest level, so it's going to keep him incredibly match fit in the run-up. And so maybe that actually is going to help him come into the World Tour Finals actually super ready and super fit. And I know Anas is someone that likes to travel and experience things. He went off, I think, this time last year in the build-up, and then he went and played the King Cup, which again he is also playing just after Christmas. So I think playing in the China Badminton Super League might actually keep him sharp, give him some different training, lots and lots of matches, and he'll be training with a Chinese team. So I think, and also the World Tour Finals are held in China, so the travel time when it comes to, I know China's a big place, I'm not sure where he's going to be playing just the week before. I know it's not in Hangzhou, so it still could be relatively large travel time, but it would be less than it would be if he was traveling from Dubai. So possibly this could be a good thing for him. Now, Antonsen has won the World Tour Finals before. He won it in the 2020 World Tour Finals, but it was held in January of 2021, where he beat Victor, where he stopped Victor winning 3 back-to-back tournaments. That was in the Bangkok bubble. Last year, he finished his 2024 season really strongly by winning the King Cup. Can he finish 2025 with another World Tour Finals title? Now, I did write that question before actually realizing that the King Cup was even on again this year, and that Anas will be going to defend his title. But still, can he finish 2025 with another World Tour Finals title? He just better hope that the service judge doesn't cough again. No, jokes aside, we all know that there was that huge hoo-ha last year with the situation in his match versus Shi Feng. The cough gate that it became, and so obviously he'll be hoping for a slightly better experience, because after that, the coughing and the booing from the Chinese fans was pretty incessant. So he'll be hoping for a better time this year, not just in terms of doing better and winning, but just enjoying his experience in the World Tour Finals that little bit more. Number 5. This is the one player who's different from last year, and that's Christo Popov of France. For me, Popov has had a really fantastic 2025. It's been the year where we've seen him consistently get into the latter stages. His world ranking has got up to 7 or 8 now. He is the highest ranked French player, and that means that he's getting seeded at the big events. But it wasn't just in singles he had a great year. He also became European champion in doubles with his brother Thomas Jr. Popov, which is an absolutely brilliant result. And they also reached the final of the German Super 300. But in the men's singles, let's focus on that. He got bronze at those European Championships in the men's singles, and he's got to 2 World Tour Finals, both ending in runner-up. At the Swiss Super 300, he lost to Wang Hongyang of China, and at the French Open Super 750, his home event, he had an absolutely fantastic run all the way to the final, but lost to Antonsen, the player I just spoke about. On top of these finals, Christo has also reached 4 semi-finals And they're all at, 3 of those have been at the Super 750 level. So the China Masters Super 750, you got to the Hong Kong Open, which was relatively recently, Super 500, the Japan Open Super 750, and the Singapore Open Super 750. So there are some big tournaments to get to the latter stages. That kind of backs up what I said, is that in 2024, I think he got to 1 or 2, I don't know exactly, but I can recall maybe 1, maybe 2 tournaments. I think one of them actually might be in All England, actually, but where he got a suddenly, it almost felt like an out of nowhere result. Like, oh wow, Christo Popov's in the semi-finals of a big tournament. Now you'd say that he's consistently within a chance or getting to those semi-final stages. So he's kind of cementing himself, and this World Tour final ticket that he's booked himself, coming in at number 5. It's not like he's just scraped in at number 8. He's really earned his spot there. It's just kind of, for me, cements the fact that what a fantastic year he's had, and that he's kind of, you'd say, finally kind of found his way on the World Tour final and turning into the player that he showed all that promise those years ago when he reached the World Junior final. On top of that, for his year at the World Championships on home soil, he did have an absolutely epic match with the eventual winner, Shi Yu Qi. Came very close to creating an upset, and had he, maybe he could have come away with a world medal there. This will be his, this won't be his first World Tour finals, but it will be his first for the men's singles, because in 2021, at the end of that year in Bali, him and his brother, Thomas, actually qualified in the men's doubles. But yeah, no, it's really interesting to see how Christo takes on the challenge of these World Tour finals, his first one for the men's singles. I think he definitely do some damage, and if he shows the kind of consistent level that he has, with the energy that he brings, the attacking game, he's going to be a tricky player for everyone in the draw. Moving on, Jonatan Christie. Christie has had, I'd say, a year. There's a few Why is my mouse moving? Jonatan Christie has had a kind of year. There's a few people in the same boat throughout the disciplines that have had a year that you could generally call split in the middle. The beginning of the year, he did struggle. Part of that was, obviously, he went independent. He split from the PBSI, and whenever you go independent, suddenly you've got all these things that are lumped on your shoulders, all the responsibilities. PBSI dealt with all his training, his nutrition, his tournament entry, all that stuff. Now he has to deal with all that himself, and that usually adds on. There's a bit of an adjustment phase, and on top of that, I can remember him saying that he had issues with his body, so injury issues that he had to get under control at the same time, which probably explains, from like the All England until the China Masters, where he was having a bit of a difficult time. But since then, so the second half, he's had a very good time of it. Since then, he has won 3 titles: the Korean Open Super 500, the Denmark Open Super 750, and the Hangzhou Open Super 500. And he reached one other final, the Indonesia Masters Super 500. That one actually came at the start of the year. So he's had a very good time of it. He did have an odd bad result at his last tournament, the Australian Open, where he lost comfortably in the first round to Yushi Tanaka of Japan, who did go on to reach the final, who was playing incredibly well. But Jonatan Christie was the top seed, and a lot of people were kind of expecting him to kind of, especially with all that form I've just been talking about, to carry on. And most likely we're probably looking at him to win that tournament. It didn't happen. I didn't see that match against Yushi Tanaka, so I can't comment too much on what actually happened. Not really too sure, so I'll just move on. If Jonatan can bring the form we've seen as of late, then he's certainly a contender for the title. I'd say, if we look at players, it's hard to pick a favourite. I think most people will be looking at Shi Yu Qi based on the fact that he's the world champion and has won 3 of the 4 Super 1000 events. But if there's a player that Shi Yu Qi will want to avoid, or someone that he doesn't particularly like playing or does well against, that player is Jonatan Christie. Christie has a 10-7 head-to-head record. I think Jonatan also, this goes for Shi Feng as well, he's pretty good at beating these Chinese players when a tournament is held in China, which is where the World Tour Finals is held. But more notably for Shi Yu Qi, the last time they played each other, I think it's one of the only times actually they've played this year, that was at the Denmark Open in the final there, and Jonatan Christie came out as victorious. So like I said, they have only played once this year. I guess one thing that would go again back into Shi Yu Qi's favour is that Shi Yu Qi did beat Jonatan Christie at this event last year in the group stages. But I think Christie is if he can bring that form, he's going to be one of the favourites, and I think he's going to be one of the players that Shi Yu Qi will be hoping to avoid, because I just think that the head-to-head and the fact that one of the only finals I think Shi Yu Qi's lost, the only final he's lost this year, was that Denmark Open final, and it was to Jonatan Christie. Talking of Shi Yu Qi, we're finally onto him. I said number 7 spot, Shi Yu Qi. He is the world champion. He's the defending champion for the World Tour Finals, and he's actually looking for his 3rd World Tour Finals title. He won the first ever World Tour Finals in 2018, and obviously he won it last year. He's had a really good 2025. He's won 3 of the 4 Super 1000s, the Malaysian Open, the All England, which is arguably the biggest one, and the China Open. He helped China to the Sudirman Cup, and he finally became a world champion. I know I mentioned that already, but redeemed his heartbreaking loss in the quarterfinals of the Olympics, and what made that one a little bit more sweet, not just that the World Championships were held in Paris, just like the Olympics, but the player he beat in the final was the guy that's qualified number 1 here, Kunlavut Vitidsarn, the player that caused him that Olympic heartbreak. So that was quite the story. But on top of this, he's played in 6 finals this year, and only once, I said earlier, that he lost, which was his last final, and that was the Denmark Open to Jonatan Christie. So I think heading in with all that in mind, Shi Yu Qi will be heading into the World Tour Finals as the favourite. There is one thing though that has laid a few seeds of doubt, and that is at the recent China National Games, Shi Yu Qi had to withdraw in his quarterfinal match against Wang Hongyang. What happened was that he had won the first game 21-19, and at 3-all in the second he jumped back and landed and suddenly just stopped. And he's played a couple more points, but he then decided to retire. And what he said in interviews after is that he felt a popping sensation in his left Achilles, which obviously is cause for concern. But his coaches and himself said, well, if it was an Achilles rupture, you wouldn't be able to walk. And I think it's been since confirmed that there is no issues with it, no major issues like an Achilles rupture. It's still a little bit like unsure of what's going on. He has got a history of a slightly weak ankle, but he had a very major ankle injury where he rolled it at the 2019 Indonesia Open against Antonsen that put him out for absolutely ages and took ages for him to kind of recover from. So I initially was quite concerned that it was maybe his ankle or something around there. So I'm not sure why it was. Maybe people that follow Chinese media a little bit more might have an update on that situation, but he has confirmed that he will be travelling to Hangzhou for the World Tour Finals. He is very keen to win another title, and if it isn't too bad for him that he can get back from this and he can resume training. I know he is playing in the China Badminton Super League as well, so I haven't seen any matches. I've kept an eye out. I haven't seen any of his matches from that, so I will be seeing how he does, seeing how he's moving. But if he can come in any sort of form that he's shown this year, he is going to be the favourite, even though he's qualified 7th. For me, it's amazing how the points work. It kind of shows, he's been in 6 finals this year, 5 World Tour Finals, and 3 of those were Super 1000s, and he's only qualified, and the other finals are Super 750, and he's world champion. I know the Worlds doesn't count towards it, but how's he only qualified 7th? I wasn't expecting maybe number 1, but he should be higher. There must be something to do with how the points are distributed. That's pretty crazy, but it doesn't matter. He has got an automatic qualification, and yeah, I think he will be the favourite heading into these World Tour Finals. And finally, rounding out the men's singles, Kodai Naraoka. So for me, Kodai has been a former world silver medalist. He played the second most tournaments, I mentioned this earlier, out of all the men's singles players with 19, and he only just qualified with his final win at the Kumamoto Masters. That wasn't his final tournament. He did play the Australian Open, where he lost to Aya Shetty, but in those Kumamoto Masters, that was his only final as well this year. So it will give him some confidence. I know that wasn't his last tournament, but still winning a tournament, especially on home soil, will give him some huge confidence heading into the World Tour Finals, where, again, like all these players, like I said, have the capability to win. They have a great week. That's why they're up here. For me, with Kodai, it's going to be quite interesting to see what style he's brought, what style he brings. At Kumamoto Masters, when I did the breakdown on that, I really commended and praised the style, the more attacking, aggressive, proactive style of Kodai Naraoka, using his insane speed and skills in a more proactive light rather than just a reactive kind of chase shuttles down light. I did think that sometimes, and it was shown in the final there, and I think it also showed a little bit in his match against Aishet in Australia, that there's a limit to how much attack you can do. It's going to, for him moving forward, it's going to be how well he blends his defensive retrieval skills with his attacking skills, and getting those attacking skills a little bit more accurate and precise. Because, like I said, in the final with Kumamoto, I thought Nishimoto, once he was able to get used to the speed and the pace, which is what Kodai pretty much blasted players, he was just too quick for pretty much everyone up until that final. Kenta then could use that. Once he was adapted to that, the slight lack of accuracy, he was able to use it and counter it against Kodai. And you can see Kodai kind of getting a little bit confused as to what he should do next. Should he revert back, or should he continue, all this kind of stuff? And so it's going to be interesting at the World Tour Finals, but obviously he's playing against the absolute best in the world, that if his attack is a little bit too gun-ho or it's a little bit inaccurate, they will be able to use that against him. But saying that, he has to use that style, in all honesty, for me, if he wishes to do well, because he's going to have to play 5 matches, 3 group games, a semi and a final, if he wishes to win, which is the same amount as a regular tournament. But the level of player from first match is going to be the equivalent of a quarterfinal or a semi-final or a big World Tour event. So, you know, if he tries to run it, it's going to be more exhausting. Those matches are going to take more out of him. So if he's not able to play, if he plays just these long drawn-out rallies, or he just goes a little bit too gun-ho, I can see it getting used against him. But it's still going to be quite interesting to see how he plays. I'll be saying this about him for the next few tournaments, to see if he's continuing to develop and try to kind of get better within his attacking thing. But yeah, so it'd be quite interesting to see how he plays. So those are the 8 men's singles players. I'm going to quickly cap off this video because, like I said at the top, I will be doing these videos separately. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the 8 players who have qualified. You can tell me your favourites or this kind of stuff, who you think is going to do the best. But obviously, it's going to come a little bit down to the draw, because head-to-heads, I've already spoken about a couple of those. These players, they have the players that they do better against and worse against, and so the draw, where the groups are, could ultimately be quite a big factor in kind of predicting where players are going to fall. But please do give me your thoughts on all the players that have qualified for the men's singles in the World Tour Finals. And if you click on here or here, somewhere there, or here, somewhere on the screen, should show up the next video, which is the women's singles. I will see you in that video.